For years, a powerful billionaire surrounded his autistic daughter with expensive doctors, top therapists, and the most advanced technology, believing he was giving her everything. But while her health quietly declined, everyone ignored the signs, thinking it was just part of her condition, until one person with no medical training, the Maid, did something no one else had the courage to do and changed everything. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Ethan Walker started the day just like he always did, surrounded by large screens in his office, talking to people on video calls, checking numbers, and signing documents. He was one of the richest men in the country, and every minute of his time was used to grow his business even more. His mansion was filled with expensive furniture, smart devices, and top-level staff. Ethan believed he had full control over everything. His daughter, Aurora, who was just 5 years old, was being looked after in another room. She didn't speak, didn't smile much, and often had what people called meltdowns. Ethan believed he was doing his best. He had hired the best doctors, therapists, and specialists. He paid for every possible kind of treatment, but none of them truly helped Aurora. He didn't realize that she was slowly getting worse. She had been trying to show she was in pain, but no one listened. Ethan thought everything was fine, as long as he kept paying for it. He didn't stop to look at her. He didn't see that her body was getting weaker, her energy was fading, and no one else noticed it either, except the housemaid, who always kept an eye on her quietly. She couldn't speak, but that didn't mean she didn't feel things or try to communicate. Every day, she was taken to therapy sessions where adults told her to do things she didn't want to do. When she didn't respond, they thought she wasn't trying hard enough. If she cried or pushed things away, they said it was just part of the autism. But Aurora wasn't just reacting randomly. She was in pain. She didn't know how to say it with words, so she used her body. She touched her stomach, pushed away food, cried silently. But each time she did, people misunderstood. Her father thought she was just being difficult. The doctor said it was normal behavior. Nobody took the time to wonder if she was trying to tell them something real. Aurora didn't feel safe. Her small body was tired. Her steps were slower. She wasn't sleeping well. Her skin looked pale. But everyone was too focused on fixing her behavior. The house had cameras, therapy rooms, and machines that tracked her movements, but no one looked at her face closely. The doctors used big words to explain her actions. They said she was uncooperative or overstimulated. They made plans, schedules, and charts. Ethan liked these things because they made him feel like something was being done, but none of those charts showed that Aurora's hands were shaking more or that her breathing was getting shorter. They didn't show that she was holding her stomach often or that she had stopped playing altogether. No one paid attention to these things. Her meltdowns were treated like interruptions. Her silence was accepted as part of the diagnosis. No one saw a little girl who was sick. They just saw a patient who wasn't improving fast enough. And through it all, Ethan remained busy. He thought love meant paying for Evie. She had no special training, no degrees, and no authority in the house, but she had eyes and she had heart. She cleaned Aurora's room every day. She saw the food left untouched, the sheets covered in sweat, the toys gathering dust. She noticed when Aurora stopped making her usual noises. She noticed when Aurora could no longer lift her arms to reach for things. The girl's face looked different, tired, empty. The maid tried to mention it to one of the therapists once, saying softly that Aurora didn't seem well. But the therapist brushed it off and said it was just part of the condition. The maid knew something wasn't right. She didn't need fancy tools or medical words to know that a 5-year-old shouldn't look that lifeless. She continued doing her job, watching closely, but always feeling helpless. Everyone else followed protocols. Only she trusted her instincts. And what she felt deep down was fear, fear that something serious was happening and no one wanted to see it. She was the only person in the house who truly looked at Aurora as a little girl, not a problem. Back in his office, Ethan continued making decisions and attending meetings. He never stopped to check on his daughter personally. He received reports, progress updates, and invoices. Everything looked organized. Everything seemed to be under control. He never asked how she felt. He never noticed that she had started sleeping more during the day, or that she could barely keep her eyes open at dinner. When he did see her briefly in the hallway, he would pat her head quickly, then rush off to his next call. The truth was, Ethan didn't understand his daughter. He thought silence meant calm. He thought stillness meant improvement. He believed that with more effort, more therapy, and more money, she would eventually behave like other kids. But Aurora wasn't just different, she was unwell. Her body was showing signs of something deeper, but all the adults around her kept calling it behavior. No one asked real questions. No one paused. Aurora had stopped trying to show her pain because it never worked. She was shutting down completely. Her world was getting darker, and even though she was surrounded by people, she had never felt more alone. That afternoon, during another session in the therapy room, Aurora's body finally gave up. She didn't scream or cry. She didn't throw anything. She simply let herself drop to the floor slowly, without making a sound. The therapist thought she was tired or distracted and didn't react right away. The session continued, with the therapist explaining exercises to the housemaid, who was nearby cleaning up some toys. It was the maid who noticed something was wrong. She turned and saw Aurora lying there, not moving. Her eyes were half open, but her face was pale and her lips looked dry. The maid rushed over and gently touched the girl's cheek. It was cold. She called her name, hoping she would move or respond, but Aurora stayed still. That was the moment everything became clear. Aurora hadn't been acting out. She hadn't been resisting therapy. She had been in pain for a long time, and no one listened. No one saw her suffering. And now she had collapsed in silence, in a house full of professionals who never truly looked. While everyone else kept working around her, only the maid saw the truth. The little girl needed help, and it might already be too late. Marina had worked in the Walker mansion for almost 3 years. She cleaned the rooms, helped prepare meals, and made sure everything stayed in order. But more than that, she had spent every day near Aurora. While others saw Aurora as a patient, Marina saw her as a little girl. She didn't have medical training, but she paid close attention. She noticed details others ignored. Over time, she realized that Aurora's behavior wasn't just about autism. The way the girl grabbed her belly, the tired eyes, the way she avoided being touched, it all felt different. These weren't emotional meltdowns. They looked like signs of real physical pain. Marina kept observing in silence, not wanting to interfere too much. But when Aurora fainted again in front of her, it was no longer possible to ignore. The girl's small body was limp. Her skin was pale and cold. Marina felt something was very wrong. Everyone else kept saying it was just a bad day, but Marina didn't believe that anymore. Without asking anyone, and knowing she could get in trouble, she picked up Aurora in her arms. The girl's head rested on her shoulder, weak and still. Marina ran to the car. She wasn't waiting for permission. Marina drove fast. She didn't know if what she was doing was allowed, but she knew she had no other choice. The staff might be angry. Ethan might even fire her, but none of that mattered now. Aurora was more important. Marina didn't have a car of her own, so she used one of the service vehicles from the mansion. Her hands were shaking on the wheel. She kept looking at the back seat through the mirror. Aurora was too quiet. She wasn't moving. She looked like she was sleeping, but it didn't feel right. The hospital was about 20 minutes away. It felt like hours. Marina kept whispering to the girl, hoping she would open her eyes. "We're going to help you, sweetie," she said over and over. When she finally arrived at the emergency entrance, she parked in a hurry, grabbed Aurora in her arms again, and ran inside. She yelled for help. Nurses and doctors rushed over and took Aurora from her. Everything happened fast. Questions, machines, stretchers, wires. Marina stood there out of breath, trying to explain. She wasn't family. She didn't have documents, but she told them what she knew. The girl was sick and no one had listened. The doctors began examining Aurora immediately. Her body temperature was low and her breathing was shallow. They ran tests quickly. Marina sat outside the room waiting. She was scared. She didn't know if she had done the right thing or if she would be blamed. But deep inside, she also felt a little relief. Someone was finally paying attention. After some time, a doctor came out and asked to speak with her. He looked serious. He explained that Aurora had a severe internal infection. It had been growing for days, maybe longer. Her organs were already starting to shut down. She was close to going into septic shock. If you had arrived a few hours later, she might not have made it, he said. Marina covered her mouth with her hands. The weight of those words hit her hard. She wasn't a doctor, yet she had seen what others hadn't. She had trusted her eyes and her heart, while professionals around her ignored the signs. She thought about how Aurora had tried to show her pain in her own way. All those small gestures, the way she touched her belly, the way she cried without noise. It had all meant something. Now it was finally being understood. Back at the mansion, no one knew what had happened yet. Ethan was in a meeting when he got a call from the hospital. At first, he didn't understand. Aurora, at the hospital? Who took her there? He asked, confused. When he learned that Marina had brought her in alone, without approval, he felt anger rising. But as he listened to the doctor explain the situation, his anger faded. The words, life-threatening and almost died, made everything go quiet in his head. He left the meeting and rushed to the hospital. When he arrived, he saw Aurora through a glass window. She was hooked up to tubes and machines. Her small body looked even smaller in the hospital bed. Ethan stood there, frozen. For the first time, he realized how little he knew about his daughter. All the money he had spent, all the specialists he had hired, had missed this. Marina, the woman he barely spoke to, had done what none of them could. She had noticed. She had acted. He sat down in the waiting room, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: helplessness and shame. He had failed to see what was right in front of him. Ethan stayed at the hospital for hours. He didn't make phone calls. He didn't check emails. He just sat, waiting. Marina was nearby, quiet, unsure if she should speak. Eventually, he looked at her and said, "Thank you." She nodded, not saying anything back. She didn't do it for thanks. She did it because someone had to. The doctors kept coming with updates. Aurora was stable now, but still in danger. The infection was serious, but she was getting the care she needed. One nurse said, "It's a good thing she got here when she did." Ethan kept replaying the last few weeks in his mind. All the moments he had missed, the warnings he had ignored. How many times had Aurora tried to show him she was hurting? How many times had he dismissed it as part of her condition? He didn't know the answers. All he knew now was that he had to do better. He had to change. Marina, a woman most people didn't even notice, had seen his daughter more clearly than he ever had. That truth was hard to accept, but it was also the start of something new, a crack in the wall he had built around himself. As the night went on, Ethan walked over to the glass again. Aurora was sleeping, but her chest was moving steadily now. The doctors said that she would need a few more days in the hospital and then strong antibiotics at home. She had been fighting an infection without help for too long. Ethan felt a heavy pain in his chest. This little girl was his daughter, and he hadn't protected her. He had trusted people with titles and degrees, but not the person who actually spent time with her every day. He turned to Marina again. She looked tired but calm. He asked softly, "How did you know?" She shrugged and said, "I just paid attention." That answer hit him hard. Simple, obvious, and something he hadn't done. For the first time in years, Ethan saw Marina not as a maid, but as someone who had saved his daughter's life. He realized that being rich didn't mean he saw everything. Sometimes the most important truths were visible only to those who cared. The expensive house, the long reports, the expert advice, none of it had saved Aurora. Marina had. She had done what no one else did. She looked, she listened, she acted. A few days after the emergency, Aurora was still in the hospital. Doctors continued to monitor her closely, checking her temperature, her blood pressure, and giving her strong medicine through a small tube in her arm. She didn't cry or fight, but she also didn't respond to anyone around her. Nurses tried to talk to her, but she kept her eyes down and didn't move much. One afternoon, the doctor told Ethan that Aurora might respond better if someone familiar came to visit. Without hesitating, Ethan called Marina. At first, she was unsure. She didn't want to cross any lines, but he insisted, so she left her work at the mansion and went to the hospital. When Marina walked into the hospital room, something happened that no one expected. Aurora looked at her. Not just a glance, she held eye contact for a moment. Her body, which had been stiff and distant, slowly relaxed. She didn't cry or panic. She just stayed still, watching Marina. Ethan was standing nearby, and he saw everything. He had never seen his daughter respond to anyone like that. It was quiet, simple, but it meant something big. For the first time in years, Aurora was calm, because Marina was there. Ethan sat down in the hospital chair, confused and unsure what to feel. His daughter had never reacted like that to any of the doctors, therapists, or even to him. And yet, when Marina entered the room, Aurora had reacted. He watched Marina pull a chair closer to the bed and start talking to the little girl in a soft, slow voice. She didn't use technical terms or ask Aurora to perform tasks. She didn't try to correct behavior. She just talked like someone who cared. Aurora kept watching her. She blinked slowly and shifted a little in the bed. It wasn't a big reaction, but for Aurora, this was a big step. One of the nurses whispered to Ethan, "That's the first time we've seen her engage like that." Ethan nodded, but didn't say anything. He kept looking at Marina and Aurora and started to realize something. This woman, who had no formal training, had managed to connect with his daughter in a way none of the experts ever had. There was no method, no system, no protocol, just calm, patience, and presence. That short visit changed the way Ethan saw Marina. More importantly, it changed the way he saw his own daughter. Maybe there was another way. After that day, the hospital allowed Marina to visit more often. She would come in the mornings before her shift, or stay longer in the evenings. Each time, Aurora showed small signs of comfort. One day she smiled slightly. Another day she gently touched Marina's hand. The medical team started paying attention. They wrote in their notes that the child was responding positively to a familiar caregiver. Ethan noticed too. He began inviting Marina to stay longer. At first, it felt strange to ask the maid to be part of his daughter's care, but he could no longer deny that Aurora responded better with her around. After a few more days, Aurora was ready to return home. The doctors gave a long list of follow-up instructions, medications, and therapies. Ethan followed them all, but now he also asked Marina to help directly with Aurora's care. Marina didn't pretend to be a therapist. She didn't try to teach anything. She just showed up every day with patience and kindness. She helped with meals, sat with Aurora during her quiet moments, and stayed nearby during difficult ones. Slowly, they built little moments together. Aurora didn't talk, but she looked. She listened. She leaned on Marina. That was more than anyone had seen in years. Back at the mansion, things began to shift. The place was still large and quiet, filled with expensive furniture and devices. But now, it started to feel a little different. Ethan noticed how Aurora was calmer when Marina was around, so he stopped questioning it. He allowed Marina to set small routines. In the mornings, she would sit with Aurora near the window for a few minutes before breakfast. In the afternoons, they would go outside and walk slowly through the garden. There were no goals, no checklists. They just existed in the same space. side by side. Over time, Marina learned what calmed Aurora: soft humming, gentle hand movements, and quiet time. Aurora began responding in her own ways. She would rest her head on Marina's arm or reach for her hand. These moments didn't look like progress on paper, but they meant everything. Ethan watched from a distance. He didn't understand all of it, but he saw the results. His daughter wasn't fighting anymore. She was still, present. He started asking Marina how she did it, and her answer was always the same: "I just try to make her feel safe." That simple approach had succeeded where countless expensive methods had failed. As more days passed, Marina's presence became a regular part of Aurora's daily life. She was no longer just the maid. She was someone Aurora trusted. Even the therapists who visited the house noticed the difference. They started including Marina during their sessions, even asking for her help in keeping Aurora calm. Ethan kept watching it all, still trying to understand how things had changed so quickly. He had always believed that results came from money, structure, and hiring the best. But now, his daughter was opening up to someone who simply sat with her and paid attention. He started asking himself questions he had never thought of before. Why hadn't he noticed these things? Why did he trust strangers more than someone who had been right in front of him for years? Marina didn't look for credit. She didn't speak much. But she showed up day after day with the same quiet energy. Her only focus was Aurora, and that made all the difference. What once was a cold, distant house was starting to feel a little warmer. Not because of decorations or expensive technology, but because of the bond forming between a 5-year-old girl and the one person who truly saw her. For the first time, Ethan began to feel something unfamiliar: hope. Not because of a new therapy or medical breakthrough, but because he had seen his daughter respond to a real human connection. He still didn't fully understand her, but now he was willing to learn. He started joining them during their small routines, just sitting nearby, not trying to fix anything. Marina didn't guide him. She just let him be part of it. Sometimes Aurora would glance at him. Other times she would ignore him completely. But Ethan didn't take it personally anymore. He understood now that everything took time. He realized that building trust wasn't about forcing progress. It was about showing up. That lesson didn't come from a book, it came from Marina. She had done something no one else had done. She had created a bridge between Aurora and the world, not through programs or instructions, but through consistency and care. And even in a house filled with money, it had taken something simple to start healing a broken connection. As the days continued, the mansion that once felt lifeless began to change. Because one person chose to stay close, and a little girl finally felt safe enough to reach back. Aurora's progress became more and more visible with each passing week. Since Marina had started spending more time with her, everything was changing. Aurora used to avoid eye contact. Now, sometimes, she would look directly at Marina. She used to stay quiet and distant. Now, she touched Marina's arm or shirt gently, especially when she wanted her close. Sometimes, she even smiled. They weren't big smiles, but they were real. Ethan and the therapists started to notice that these reactions didn't happen with anyone else. Even during therapy sessions, Aurora stayed tense. But when Marina was present, she was calmer. The doctors tried to explain it using their usual terms: bonding, familiarity, emotional safety. But the truth was simple. Aurora liked being with Marina. The connection was real. She felt safe, and she didn't have to be anyone else. She could just be herself. Ethan started to feel something shift inside him. For a long time, he believed only experts could help his daughter. Now he was watching a woman with no training make more difference than all the professionals combined. Even the therapists had to admit that Aurora was improving, and it wasn't because of new techniques, it was because someone truly cared. One day, something unexpected happened. It was late afternoon, and a specialist had come to the house to run some exercises with Aurora. As usual, Aurora didn't engage much. She followed the motions passively, waiting for it to end. When the therapist asked Marina to step out of the room so Aurora could focus better, things quickly went downhill. As soon as Marina left, Aurora's mood shifted. Her breathing changed and her movements became sharp. She got agitated. The therapist tried calming her down with toys and words, but it didn't work. Aurora was distressed. Her hands shook. She started banging them softly against her chair. The therapist called for help, unsure of what to do. Ethan was nearby and entered the room. He watched as Aurora began to cry, not loudly, but in a way that showed something was deeply wrong. He turned to the therapist and said, "Get Marina back in here." Marina came back quickly and ran to Aurora's side. But just as she reached her, something happened that froze the room. Aurora opened her mouth, looked at Marina with tear-filled eyes, and said one word, "Nina." It was soft but clear, her very first spoken word. Everyone in the room went silent. Ethan stood still, shocked. The therapist stopped what she was doing. Aurora had never said anything before. Not a sound that made sense. For years, everyone assumed she was completely nonverbal. But now, in the middle of a moment of fear and distress, she had spoken. And it wasn't Mom or Dad. It wasn't the name of a toy or object. It was Marina's name, well, her version of it, Nina. That was how Aurora chose to call her. Marina knelt beside her, holding her gently. Aurora continued crying softly but calmed down as Marina held her hand. It was a powerful moment, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. This child, who so many thought was unreachable, had reached out, clearly, and for one person. Ethan's heart sank a little, not in jealousy, but in realization. His daughter's first word didn't go to him or to her mother. It went to the only person who had truly been present for her. He watched Aurora slowly stop shaking and lean her head toward Marina's shoulder. For Ethan, everything changed in that moment. This wasn't about roles or titles anymore. It was about love that was felt and returned. After that day, no one could deny Marina's role in Aurora's development. The therapists stopped acting like she was just the maid. They began to include her more directly in sessions, even asking for her help when things got difficult. But even without their permission, Ethan had already made his decision. Marina was no longer just staff, she was essential. Ethan called her aside the next day. He didn't speak like a boss, he spoke like a father. He thanked her sincerely for what she had done. He said, "You've done something no one else could." Marina looked down, uncomfortable with praise, but she nodded quietly. From that point on, her role in the house changed. She wasn't treated like a background figure anymore. She was invited to meetings about Aurora's care. She was trusted, and most importantly, she was allowed to keep doing what had worked all along, being close, being kind, and being real. Marina didn't follow therapy scripts. She followed Aurora's signals. She paid attention, and Aurora responded. Little by little, more changes appeared. Aurora began making small sounds more often. Sometimes she reached for Marina's hand without being prompted. These weren't just actions. They were signs of trust. Inside the house, routines slowly transformed. Instead of being filled only with therapy schedules, task lists, and medical checkups, the days now had moments that felt natural. After breakfast, Marina and Aurora would sit together by the window or play with simple objects, spoons, blocks, pieces of string. It wasn't complicated, but it worked. Aurora started showing more reactions. When Marina laughed softly, Aurora watched her closely, sometimes even smiling back. During bedtime, Aurora was calmer when Marina was the one helping with the night routine. She would lie still, sometimes holding Marina's fingers. Ethan saw all of this. Every time he did, he understood something deeper. For years, he had thought results came from following science and hiring the best, but none of that had created this bond. What changed everything was presence. Real, quiet, steady presence. Marina had done what thousands of dollars in therapy hadn't done. She gave Aurora the space to feel safe and seen. Ethan began learning too. He joined some of the activities. He stayed longer during Aurora's routines. He didn't try to fix. He tried to listen. And as he did, he felt something that had been missing in the house for a long time: connection. Ethan didn't fully understand what this journey would become. He didn't know how far Aurora could go or what the future held, but he finally understood what mattered now. His daughter's first word hadn't been about who was supposed to matter. It had been about who actually showed up. That truth changed everything. From that day forward, Marina was not just allowed, she was needed. Aurora didn't see Marina as help. She saw her as safety, as comfort, as someone who responded when she reached out. Ethan made sure Marina had time, resources, and space to continue being close to Aurora. He didn't try to take her place. He learned from her. Slowly, the barriers around Aurora began to break, not through pressure, but through care. And Ethan began breaking his own barriers too. The walls of pride, of distance, of cold logic started to fall. All because a child said one word, a small voice that changed the path of everyone around her. From that moment on, Marina was not just part of the house. She was part of the story. And more than that, she was part of Aurora's world, the first person to reach her, the first person Aurora ever called by name. Everything was going well, until one morning, Marina didn't show up. There was no message, no call. At first, Ethan thought maybe she had the day off or was running late. But as hours passed, it became clear something was wrong. The house felt different. Aurora noticed it immediately. She waited by the door. She looked around the house. When someone else tried to help her eat breakfast, she pushed the spoon away. During therapy, she refused to participate. She didn't cry loudly, but her whole body was tense. She stayed silent, but upset. When the day ended and Marina still hadn't come, Aurora stopped responding to everything. She sat still in her room, not eating, not moving. The next day, nothing changed. No one could get her to talk, eat, or even make eye contact. Ethan called Marina's phone several times, but no one answered. He started to worry, not just about Aurora, but about Marina too. Her absence was creating a reaction stronger than any illness. After a third day without news, Ethan asked someone to go check on her address. He needed to know what had happened. He had to find the woman who had become the center of his daughter's world. Ethan didn't send a driver or assistant this time. He decided to go himself. He got into his car and drove across the city to the neighborhood listed in Marina's employee file. It was far from his world of luxury. Small houses, narrow streets, and a lot of people walking instead of driving. When he found the address, it was an old, worn-down building with cracked walls and clothes drying outside the windows. He knocked on the door. A young boy opened it and stared at him silently. Marina appeared behind him, surprised. She looked tired and stressed. Ethan asked, "Why didn't you tell us anything?" Marina explained quickly. Her mother had gotten very sick, something with her lungs. It had happened suddenly, and she had no choice but to leave everything behind. Her family couldn't afford proper treatment. She had been trying to care for her mother full-time and look after the house. She didn't have time to call or explain. Ethan stood there, listening. For the first time, he saw the other side of Marina's life, the one she never brought into his home. She wasn't just a helper. She had her own struggles, and right now, everything in her life was falling apart. Ethan didn't speak right away. He looked around the small home. There were no expensive items, no advanced technology, just a few pieces of furniture and a clean but old kitchen. He saw Marina's mother lying in a small room with a cough that didn't stop. It was clear she needed care, but there were no machines or medicine in sight. He realized how hard things had been for Marina. She had shown up at his mansion every day, calm and ready to help, while her own world was filled with pressure and difficulty. He looked at Marina and said, "Why didn't you ask for help?" She replied, "Because I didn't think I could." Ethan left the house, but he didn't go back home right away. He made phone calls, not to punish anyone, but to solve the problem. He called a doctor he trusted, and he arranged for Marina's mother to be taken to a proper hospital. He called his financial team and asked them to set up emergency support for Marina's family. It was the first time he was using his wealth not for business, not for comfort, but to truly help someone who mattered, not because of what she could give, but because of who she was. The next day, a team of people arrived at Marina's house. A doctor examined her mother and started proper treatment. A driver delivered bags of medicine, clean bedding, and food. A few hours later, Ethan returned, this time with paperwork offering to help Marina's family long-term. He explained everything simply. Her job was safe, her mother would be treated, and they would no longer have to choose between survival and health. Marina didn't know what to say. She had never expected any of this. She accepted the help with tears in her eyes. Ethan didn't ask for thanks. He just said, "Aurora needs you, and we need to take care of you too." That evening, Marina returned to the mansion. Aurora was sitting on the floor, holding one of her toys but not playing. When she saw Marina, she froze for a second, then stood up and ran toward her. She hugged her tightly, without saying a word. Marina held her just as tight. Ethan watched from a few steps away. It was the first time in days that his daughter had shown any emotion. He didn't speak. He just let the moment happen. Aurora was smiling again, for the first time since Marina left. Over the next few days, things slowly returned to normal, but something inside the house had changed forever. Ethan no longer saw Marina as someone in the background. He saw her as a person with her own life, pain, and strength. He began including her in conversations about Aurora's care. He asked how she was doing. He made sure she had time to rest and support her mother. The staff noticed it too. The way Ethan treated Marina was different now. There was more respect, more humanity. Even Aurora, who still didn't speak much, made it clear how much she needed her. When Marina was near, she ate better, slept better, and interacted more. Ethan started visiting Aurora's room more often, not just to check, but to sit beside her. He didn't have all the answers, but he was learning, not through books or experts, but through watching Marina. She didn't try to control Aurora. She just stayed close. She listened, and that was what made the difference. The mansion, once filled with silence and routine, was now filled with something else: connection. It had taken a crisis, a disappearance, and an act of kindness to bring that change. But now it was real. What had started as fear turned into something stronger. Aurora had lost her safe person, and for a few days her world had stopped. But now, with Marina back, she was slowly healing again. Marina wasn't just her comfort, she was her bridge to the world. Ethan had once believed money could fix everything, but in this moment he realized something more powerful. Love, consistency, and human care were what truly mattered. Helping Marina had not only saved her mother, it had saved Aurora too. Because without Marina, Aurora shut down completely. And that truth was bigger than any ego or pride. Ethan began investing in the people around him, not just the systems. He paid attention to what they needed. And because of that, the house itself changed. It wasn't just a place full of rules and machines. It became a place where people looked at each other, listened, and cared. Aurora began smiling more often. She began trusting again. And as she held Marina's hand through another quiet afternoon, Ethan saw something new in his daughter's eyes. She felt safe again. And for the first time, the mansion had something it never had before: a heart. Marina's return changed everything again, but this time for the better. Aurora began making progress that even her doctors didn't expect. She didn't just smile or make sounds anymore. She started putting words together. Her first small sentences came out slowly and not always clearly, but they were real. Simple things like "want water," "sit here," or "hug Nina." Every new word was a big deal. Ethan and the therapists watched in amazement as Aurora, once completely silent, started using language to express her needs. More than that, She was beginning to show real emotional understanding. She knew when someone was sad. She knew how to ask for comfort. She even reached out to others, especially Marina, when she wanted to share something. It wasn't just language, it was emotional connection. And the person she trusted the most continued to be Marina. Every step forward Aurora took had one thing in common. Marina was there. Ethan finally saw it clearly. This progress wasn't coming from new tools or strategies. It was coming from a bond that was built through time, trust, and love. And with that understanding, Ethan stopped seeing Marina as just a helper. She was more than that. She was part of something deeper. Ethan began to think about things differently. He used to separate people into roles: employees, doctors, guests, family. But Marina didn't fit into any of those categories anymore. She wasn't just an employee, she wasn't a guest either. She was always there, guiding Aurora, listening to her, protecting her. Ethan watched them together each day, and something became very clear. This woman had become a part of their lives in a way no one else ever had. One afternoon, after a quiet walk in the garden with Aurora, Ethan asked Marina to sit down. He told her he wanted to invite her to live in the house permanently, not as staff, but as someone who would help raise Aurora. At first, Marina was shocked. She didn't know what to say, but Ethan explained it clearly. "You're already family to her. It's time we make it official." Marina accepted, but only under one condition. She didn't want special treatment, just the ability to keep doing what she had always done, be there for Aurora. Ethan agreed. From that moment on, she wasn't part of the staff anymore. She moved into a room near Aurora's, and everything began to feel more connected, more natural. This was something new, and it felt right. With Marina now living with them, the house became more than just a place to stay. It began to feel like a home. Meals were different. They sat together more often. There was more laughter, more talking, and fewer silences filled with tension. Aurora thrived in this new space. Her confidence grew. She explored new games, tried more foods, and used more words every week. She started drawing, using colors to show how she felt. When something made her happy, she would say "happy" while pointing. When she was upset, she could now say no instead of melting down. These were small victories to some, but to Ethan and Marina, they were huge. One evening, Aurora picked up a book and sat between them, pointing at pictures and trying to describe what she saw. Ethan smiled, and Marina helped guide her gently. There were no schedules or therapy checklists at that moment, just presence, just connection. What was once a cold and structured house now had real life inside it. Ethan had spent years thinking he could build a perfect family through effort and control. But the real family that formed in front of him had come from something simpler, being there for each other. Time passed, and Aurora's development continued in a steady, beautiful way. She wasn't like other children, and that no longer mattered. What mattered was that she was herself, and that she felt safe being that way. She asked for things, showed love in her own way, and started responding with real feelings. One evening, the three of them were in the living room. Marina was helping Aurora with a puzzle. Ethan sat nearby, watching. Out of nowhere, Aurora paused, stood up, and walked toward Marina. She took her hand and looked into her eyes. Then, she said clearly, "Thank you for listening to me." The room fell silent. Marina's eyes filled with tears. Ethan covered his mouth, deeply moved. That one sentence held everything. Aurora didn't say it perfectly, but it was clear enough to understand. She knew what had happened. She remembered how Marina had always been there when no one else was. That sentence was more than gratitude. It was awareness. It was understanding. It was love. It proved what had been true all along. Aurora hadn't needed more equipment, or stricter routines, or smarter doctors. She had needed one person who truly saw her, and that person had always been Marina. After that day, their bond grew even stronger. Marina helped Aurora with daily tasks, but more importantly, she gave her emotional support. Ethan took on a different role too. He joined more often. He learned how to comfort Aurora, how to be patient, and how to stay present without expecting instant results. They became a team, not built by blood or tradition, but by choice. Their lives didn't follow any normal pattern, but they worked together with understanding and respect. One weekend, Ethan invited a few close friends and relatives to a small gathering at home. It wasn't a big party, just a quiet event to celebrate how far Aurora had come. During the evening, Aurora walked up to the group. She held Marina's hand tightly. She looked around, then said something simple but powerful. Family. Everyone paused. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Marina squeezed her hand gently. That word, family, meant everything. It wasn't about who was related by blood. It was about who stayed, who showed up, who loved with action. In that moment, their journey was complete. Not perfect, but whole. The little girl who once couldn't speak had found her voice, her safety and her place, and together they had created a family that made sense. Their story didn't need a perfect ending. It had something better, a beginning that kept growing stronger. Marina's place in the home was never planned, but it became necessary. She had arrived as a helper. She stayed as something much more. Aurora had taught them all a lesson they would never forget. Love isn't about roles, rules, or labels. It's about showing up, again and again, through silence, through crisis, through every small step forward. In the final quiet moment of that evening, Aurora leaned against Marina's side and said the word again. Softly, family. Ethan stood nearby, no longer trying to fix or control, just being there. And for the first time in his life, he felt complete, not because he had everything, but because he had something real, a little girl who had found her words, a woman who had given her heart, and a house that had finally become a home. There were no more barriers, no more silence filled with fear. Only a shared space of trust and care. That was all Aurora ever needed. That was what they had now. And that word, family, was no longer just a word. It was the truth they had built together. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.